Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, Mike is going to take us on a journey through The Legend of Zelda. We've been waiting a long time to do this one, and now it's time.
And we're here. Da 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 da. That's what it's like.
That was good, yeah.
Because you get
Nicely
it?
done. I see what you did there. That was good.
It's better when you explain the reference after the fact. So we're going to go talk about the first two Zelda games today. That's Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. I would talk more about Zelda, but we got a lot of emails over the break, which is exciting, and we're going to do those at the end. So I think
we're going to do a little bit of Zelda, a little bit of email grab bag.
Yeah, a little mailbag at the end. So I'm pretty excited about it. So as most of you probably know already, The Legend of Zelda was the idea of Super Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto. Our friend.
What a boss.
What a boss.
Our close personal friend of the podcast, Shigeru Miyamoto.
Close personal friend. Just emailing back and forth all the time. With The Legend of Zelda, Miyamoto wanted to flesh out the idea of a game world. And I put that in quotes, world, even further, giving players a place to play around. He said, quote, miniature garden that they can put inside their drawer, is what the quote was. That's nice, right? That's cute. So he drew his inspiration from experiences as a boy around Kyoto, where he would go explore around like nearby fields and in caves in the woods, like just doing young boy stuff. You know, I did that. I explored the forest outside behind my house. Did you explore places around the beautiful Tri-City area growing up?
You bet I did. I lived pretty far out from the city proper, and so there was tumbleweeds everywhere.
So you were in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So he's always trying to go through the Zelda games to impart players some sense of like limitless wonder, you know, like, ooh, like look at there's so much to explore. And I found a lot of parallels with this comment and then Pokemon creator Satoshi Tajiri, because, you know, Tajiri's whole thing was like, hey, I want to like take people bug catching in my backyard like I did as a kid, but that turned into pocket monsters. So there you go. I just thought that was a fun little parallel that we found between the two because we do a video game history podcast. All right.
Another close personal friend of the podcast, Satoshi Tajiri.
That's true. So many close personal friends. Miyamoto said, quote, when I was a child, I went hiking and I found a lake. It was quite a surprise for me to stumble upon it when I traveled around the country without a map, trying to find my way, stumbling on amazing things as I went. I realized how it felt to go on an adventure like this, end quote. So he wants to have people go on these adventures, you know, and actually it was the memory of being lost amid the maze of sliding doors at his family's home in Sonobe that was like the inspiration behind Zelda's labyrinthian dungeons.
Oh.
That's fun.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
Big scary maze house.
Big scary maze house. Oh, podcast producer Delilah's here. She's meowing really loud. This will be great for podcasting. So one fun fact about The Legend of Zelda that I didn't know, actually, is it wasn't released on an NES first. It was released on the Famicom Disk System. Did you know that?
Oh, I did know that because that was how they got to do save games because they hadn't done battery backed save cartridges yet.
Exactly. Gosh, Tyler's all on top of this research. No, I did the research because he doesn't have to, because he just knows it in his brain. It's amazing. So it actually wasn't later until it was converted to a cartridge for American release on the NES. You know, that famous gold cartridge we all know and love that we think about all the time, and it's beautiful.
I think about it very often.
It's so nice. It's so pretty. So, The Legend of Zelda was directed and designed by Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka, and they are both credited in the credits as S. Miyahon and 1010 in the closing credits of it. So it's kind of cool. They all have like nicknames in the credits. Miyamoto produced the game, and Tezuka wrote the story and the script, but then also Keiji Terui, screenwriter, who also worked on anime shows like Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball, wrote the backstory for the instruction manual. And he drew inspiration from medieval Europe, like the conflicts of medieval Europe. So development began in 1984, and the game was originally intended to be a launch game for the Famicom Disk System. The development team worked on The Legend of Zelda and Super Mario Bros. Concurrently, as in at the same time. So they wanted to kind of separate their ideas between the two, because Super Mario Brothers, I think we all know, super linear. You know, you start on one end of the screen, you end up on the other end of the screen.
It's about as linear as it gets. You can't even go backwards. They don't even let you.
Can't. Yeah, they don't even let you do it. So The Legend of Zelda is completely the opposite of that. In Mario, Miyamoto downplayed the importance of the high score in favor of simply like completing the game. And this concept, though, did have a lot in common with Legend of Zelda. Like, he was like kind of just wanted it to be like, hey, I want you to explore everything and complete the story of the game. That's my goal. That's what I'm looking at and looking forward to you doing in beautiful Zelda. He was also in charge of deciding which concepts were, quote, Zelda ideas and which stuff were Mario ideas. Because, you don't want Mario running around throwing bombs, do you? Maybe you do.
Well, he does in Super Mario Brothers 2.
That's true. And he
and
does
you also don't want
potions.
Link doing side-scrolling platforming. Oh, no. Except he does in both of those games we're going to talk about today.
Also, you don't want Link wearing a mustache. That would look weird.
You don't want that. He has never done that. Will never do that.
That'd be completely and totally terrifying. I think we can all agree on that. So, contrasting with Mario, Zelda was made non-linear, as I said before, and it forced the players to think about what they should do next. It's very much like the original Zelda is kind of hard because it doesn't really give you instructions where to go.
Yeah, it just kind of just gives you this world and says, like, I don't know, go do stuff.
Miyamoto even said that those in Japan were confused and had trouble finding their way through the multi-path dungeons, and in initial game designs, the player would start with the sword already in their inventory. Unlike where you start the game, I believe you have a shield when you start the game, correct? Just a shield.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
and
must be that. Must be just a shield.
Yeah, and then you go into a cave like right in front of you, and an old man goes, "It's dangerous, take this." I talk about that later, but it's like a very famous meme thing now.
Yeah.
So rather than merely simplifying the game for players, though, Miyamoto forced the player to listen to the old man and that gives them the sword, and he encourages like interactions among people, and he wants you to share ideas with each other to find various hidden secrets. Like he created this kind of Zelda club, like if you found something cool in Zelda, you'd tell your friend about it. And that made you communicate with other people, even though it's a one-player game. Isn't that nice?
That is pretty nice. Nice forced interaction because, in the 80s, those of us playing video games didn't always get a ton of social interaction.
Yeah, that's true. Also, people say that this style of gameplay where you got to kind of figure things out would come into fruition in the future with Animal Crossing. That's a game that's solely based on communication. And I have never played an Animal Crossing game, but I'm going to take their word for it when I read that. So
there's a new one coming out this year, so pick it up for your Switch.
Ooh, spoilers. You just give them a big surprise.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. No, it's fine. It wasn't that big of a surprise anyway, but we'll talk about that more later. The hero of Legend of Zelda is named Link. It's not Zelda. That's like the thing that people get really mad about sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But you shouldn't get
character
mad.
Zelda.
Yeah, but if someone says that, don't get mad at them. Just politely correct them, I guess. So, it was called Link because he wanted to connect players inserted into this world. Link. He's a link between the two worlds. You play as him. Hey, there you go. So he designed by Miyamoto as a coming-of-age motif to identify with, journeying as an ordinary boy strengthened by trials to triumph over great challenges and to defeat evil. So, the name of the princess, I didn't actually know this at all. This is a cool fact. Zelda was named after Zelda Fitzgerald. That is the wife of famous novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald. She was a famous and beautiful woman from all accounts, and Miyamoto just really liked her name, and so they took the liberty of using it. So that's where Zelda came from.
I did not know.
There you go. You learn something new every day, huh? That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So, early Zelda concept involved a lot of technological elements, like microchips for the Triforce made up of like electronic circuits and like time travel and all sorts of cool stuff that would obviously come in later games. Like we know, like Ocarina of Time is a lot of time travel. Also, the Sheikah Slate in Zelda Breath of the Wild is essentially a fantasy iPad. So there you go. Koji Kondo, credited in the credits of the game as Konchan, composed the game's 5 music tracks. Get ready for this. Might be the fact of the episode. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
So he had planned to use Maurice Ravel's Bolero as the title theme. So that would be the title theme that played when you opened the game, but was forced to change it super late in the development cycle because of the copyright for that song it had not yet expired. They couldn't use it. So he wrote the theme, the dun dun da 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 da, to Zelda in one day.
What?
Yeah, he wrote it in one day. The most iconic song in all of video games, I feel like. Possibly in all of video games. I mean, da-da-da-da-da-da, that's a pretty big one too,
But he also wrote that one, so.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
Koji Kondo, what a monster.
Total
good monster.
boss.
A nice monster.
Hero of the podcast, close personal friend of Tyler and I. So,
yeah.
In February 1986, Nintendo released The Legend of Zelda as the launch game, as they had planned, for the family computer's new disk system peripheral, the Famicom disk system. So, it joined the re-release of Super Mario Brothers, tennis, baseball, golf, soccer, and mahjong as part of the system's introduction. That's a lot of bangers in there.
Yeah, wow. Really just cranking them out.
Yeah, some real bops in there. I'm trying to use the lingo that the kids use. It feels pretty good.
That's what they use. They say bops.
Yep, totally. So it made full use of the disc card media's advantages over traditional ROM cartridges with an increased size of a whopping, get ready for it, 128 kilobytes. Wow.
Holy moly.
Why would you need any more space? There's just so much there.
That ought to be enough for anybody.
Yeah, that's right. Which would be expensive to produce on a cartridge format, but they will eventually do that, just so everyone knows, obviously.
Nope.
There's
Nintendo Switch games, still under 128 kilobytes.
And it is amazing what they can do with compression.
Wow.
So, due to the still limited amount of disk space, all of the text used in the game was from only a single syllabary known as katakana. I thought this was pretty interesting, so I left it in. And it pretty much means like it's a supplement of traditional Japanese languages with origins like hiragana and kanji characters. So they kind of made this language combined together so they could fit it into the game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, and this is something that's obviously really cool, rather than passwords, they are rewritable disks. Save players' game progress. So that's how you have saved games. And the extra sound channel provided by the system was utilized for certain sound effects, most notably Link's sword beam, if he has full health, which is cool. The roars and growls of the dungeon bosses, that was used for the extra sound channel. And those of defeated enemies, like when they die, they make a noise. Those three noises are what that extra sound channel was primarily for. Sound effects had to be altered for the eventual cartridge game release version of Zelda, which used the Famicom PCM channel. Doing a lot of techno babble here. I'm sure other people understand this. I certainly don't, but I just figured you might as well include it. We have some tech people out there that probably want to hear about the tech.
That's true.
So the game also took advantage of the system's controller having a built-in microphone. This is only on the Famicom disk system, but it's pretty funny because so what would happen is there was a large-eared rabbit monster, and you would defeat it by blowing or shouting into the microphone of their Famicom disk system controller. And they forgot to take this out of the US instruction manual. So people would start talking into their controller thinking it was doing anything, but it didn't do anything. They kind of trolled the US market, which I kind of enjoy personally. The cartridge version made use of the memory management controller chip, specifically the MMC1 model, which could use bank switching to allow for larger games than had previously been possible. And so you could also use battery-powered RAM, which let players save their data for the first time on any cartridge-based medium. The other important factor of the NES cartridge for Legend of Zelda was it was gold, as I mentioned before. That's the most important factor, I think.
What's cool about those battery-packed the batteries in there is, it may not be true today, but until very recently, a lot of those batteries still held a charge and still allowed you to save your game. If you have a copy of Zelda that's not saving properly, it's probably because the battery's dead. You need to crack that thing open and replace the battery. But that's actually pretty easy to do, I think. So
yeah, put a new battery in there.
Yeah, just pop a new battery. It's like a little watch battery. It's a standard thing. So
yeah. So that gold cutter cartridge, by the way, was featured a small portion of the box cutaway, so you could see that gold cartridge when you would go buy Legend of Zelda in the store. The corner was cut, so you could be like, "What? The cartridge is gold? This is crazy."
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, in 1988, The Legend of Zelda sold 2 million copies.
Holy moly, that's so many copies.
Yeah, we're going to get some more sales figures later, but that's just what happened when it came out. Nintendo of America sought to keep a strong base from fans, so anyone who purchased a game and sent in a warranty card to Nintendo, this is any game, by the way, became a member of the Fun Club. And this is kind of a fun little side thing that happened with Legend of Zelda, because the Fun Club was like a newsletter, and they found slowly over time that people wanted to get a hold of this newsletter, not because they had fun crosswords and jokes and stuff like that, but they would also reveal game secrets, specifically secrets to a little game called The Legend of Zelda. So the Fun Club, the Nintendo Fun Club, is directly the reason that we had Nintendo Power.
Oh, I love Nintendo Power.
So
Rest
in a
peace.
way, if it wasn't for this like warranty letter sending thing that kind of started around the time of Legend of Zelda and the Legend of Zelda secrets that would be sent out in that newsletter, we wouldn't have had Nintendo Power, which is arguably one of my favorite magazines of all time.
Oh, for sure. I probably spent more time reading Nintendo Power than any other magazine, except maybe Computer Gaming World. But even then, I probably still spent more time on Nintendo Power.
That's so weird because I have a quote of Computer Gaming World later for you. So it's exciting.
All right.
So, since Nintendo did not have many products, it only made a few commercials a year, and that meant these quality of these commercials had to be super good. So the marketing for Legend of Zelda, they spent $5 million on a commercial.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it got a great deal of attention. In it, a wiry-haired nerdy guy, John Kassir was the actor's name. He walks around in the dark, making like goofy noises and yelling out names of some enemies from the game and screaming for Zelda. You know, like he's supposed to be Link. You know, and that was the commercial. Probably not very groundbreaking at the time, but for then, people were so into it. So now, if you don't know what Zelda is and you're like, Mike, what have you been talking about this entire time? Don't worry, because this next section of the podcast is for you. The Legend of Zelda, you play as Link, a young boy looking to collect the 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom so you could defeat Ganon and rescue Princess Zelda. That is the base of the story. If you were walking in, that's all you would know, okay? The game is presented from the top-down perspective, so you start with just a shield. Oh, hey, look, I answered my own question in the thing there. And you go into a cave right when the game starts. You see an old man. He's like, it's dangerous to go alone. Take this. And that's where you get your sword. And then from there, the world's kind of your oyster. You just kind of run around, try to solve the puzzles. You fight monsters, beat scary dungeons. It gets really hard, as I recall as a kid. It's a very hard game.
And I don't think the dungeons can be beat in almost any order, I think, too, which made it simultaneously like really cool and you felt like you always had somewhere to go, and also very scary because you could do anything.
Anything you want to do. The world was open to you. But to me, and this is something I didn't know about until I did this podcast history, and you probably knew about it already, Tyler, because you know so much. You're so smart. I love you so much. One of the coolest features of the original Legend of Zelda is after you beat it, there's a more difficult version you can play through. Did you know this?
I did know that, and you don't actually have to beat it to play that second playthrough.
Oh, because you know what you do? You name what do you name your save game? What do you name it?
You name your save game Zelda, and you jump right into the second quest, the Master Quest, as some call it. And they would use that later in other Zelda games as like the hard version. Specifically, Ocarina of Time had a Master Quest version that you could play on GameCube that was pretty neato.
So you see that, everyone? Tyler and I just melded minds at the same time.
We're like Vulcans.
The planets aligned. That's right. Bestest of friends. Okay. That actually was in my notes, too. And I'm like, he's going to know it already. He knows so much. Okay. So now, The Legend of Zelda was released in Japan on February 21st, 1986 for the Famicom Disk System. It wouldn't come out in the US on the NES until July 14th, 1987. Spoilers! It was a huge hit. So obviously, The Legend of Zelda was the first NES game to sell over 1 million copies.
Wow.
But it would eventually sell 6.5 million copies worldwide. We're talking late 80s, people. That's a lot of copies.
That's pretty good for late 80s, I think.
Computer Gaming World, hey, look, it's that
right.
magazine that Tyler loves. In 1988, named the game as, quote, the best adventure of the year for Nintendo, stated that Zelda had been, quote, sensational success in translating a computer RPG to consoles. Also, they also go on to say that it was a killer app, and it kind of caused people that loved computer games to buy consoles. Like, and people stopped looking at consoles as like arcade toys.
I love that that's how Computer Gaming World refers to it, because even in the 80s, there was this like air of superiority that PC gamers had over console gamers. So they're like, wow, this game's so good, it's almost like playing an RPG on your computer. That's how they described it to say it's so good, is they're like, it takes all these games that we already love and put them on a console. And you're like, okay, guys, we get it. Your graphics are better, okay?
Now, if you want to play this game right now, just so you know, don't worry, because it's on Nintendo Switch. If you sign up for the Nintendo Online, they give it to you for free as part of their like emulator program thing. Also, I believe it's on the Nintendo Classic, the NES Classic. It's on there. And there's also a ton of other ways to play it. There was a collection that came out with this and Zelda 2, the next game we're going to talk about, for GameCube.
Oh, I had that collection. That's when I bought my GameCube, was because I saw that it came with that collection. I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to buy a GameCube and then play a bunch of not GameCube games on it.
You know what? That's a great plan.
Yeah, so I did.
All right, so that was Zelda, The Legend of Zelda, the first ever Zelda game. Now we're going to move on to the second one. And this one, a little controversial, I think, to some people.
It is, yeah.
Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. So the story of Zelda 2 is very different from the original. I wrote out the entire plot description from Wikipedia, but since I am inherently lazy, I will now kind of summarize it for you in a way that's bearable. So, Legend of Zelda, you still Link, you're now 16 years old, you wake up, you have a mark on your hand. You go to Impa, she's a character in Legend of Zelda. In lots of Legend of Zeldas, actually. She's in multiple ones. And she has you figure out that it's a key to a door. You open the door, and what? Zelda's sleeping. The Legend of Zelda. She's sleeping. She went night-night, okay? But it turns out she went night-night because of magic. Her brother did it, okay? And he felt so bad. And so now you got to try to wake her up. That's the story. You got to try to wake her up. And while you're trying to wake up Zelda, people that love Ganon are going to try to kill you. And this is because of the super dark part of the story. Ganon's followers want to kill Link because if they put Link's blood, i.e. your blood, on Ganon's ashes, it brings Ganon back to life. That's very dark.
That's super dark.
So scary. Man, I'm really glad I didn't have to say that two big paragraphs I just pasted right there. I didn't want to do that. I'm really glad I got to skip that. So, now, there are a couple notable differences, and when I say a couple, there's actually 4 notable differences between The Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2. I'm going to go over those right now before we get started. First, Link gets experience points now. You can use your XP to unlock your attacks, your magic, your life. You get XP by defeating monsters, the classic way everyone gets XP. Just like in real life, you defeat a monster, and Tyler levels up. And then he gets to use swords better.
Yep, that's how that works. I'm pretty good at swords now because every time someone defeats a monster, I level up.
That's true. Tyler's getting shared XP. He's got that little bell that they wear, the experience bell in Pokemon. So Link can raise each of those attributes, attack, magic, and life, up 8 levels. That's the maximum they can go up each. I should mention that life is not heart containers. Those are different, but you still get heart containers. It's kind of confusing, but I just want to say that out of the bat. So no one's confused. Heart containers are separate. Second, and this is the one that I think really made people kind of weirded out by Zelda 2. The game has 2 view modes, top down and side scrolling. The overworld is top down. It looks a lot like the original Legend of Zelda. But whenever Link goes into a town or a dungeon, guess what? You're essentially playing Mario with Link, and it's 2D side scrolling. Some people don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool for what it is. It just feels very different from what Zelda is, I guess.
Yeah. Also, because it's 2D side scrolling, and this is the third difference, combat means you can now jump and crouch while attacking, and you actually need to use those in different ways to defeat certain enemies. So you got to kind of
super hard. The game's really difficult.
It is a very difficult game. I was talking with a friend of the podcast and person who's emailed us before, Nam, about it actually a couple nights ago, and we were talking about how fun it is, though. It's still a cool idea.
Yeah.
I appreciate this game for what it is. Some people do not like it, but I appreciate it for what they tried. They tried to do something different. The last thing that's different about Legend of Zelda 2 versus Legend of Zelda, and it's not called Legend of Zelda, it's Zelda 2 versus The Legend of Zelda, is magic items are slightly different. You still collect several items in order to progress through the game, just like previous installments and the next installments in the series. But these special items grant abilities which either remain in permanent use for the rest of the game or can be only activated in the overworld. And you get these items from old men in towns, is what I wrote.
That's where all the good items come from, old men in towns.
Old men in towns have the items. Everyone knows it.
Yep.
So as far as development for Zelda 2 goes, Shigeru Miyamoto, the co-creator of the original Legend of Zelda, intended to make Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, fundamentally different from its predecessor. He did this on purpose, people. Okay? A separate team was actually used than the first installment. It wasn't the same team from the original Legend of Zelda. It was completely different to develop the sequel. They wanted to kind of change it up a little bit. However, Miyamoto, who is credited under the pseudonym Miyahan in the credits, as I said before, they use fun nicknames, was still the producer, and Takashi Tezuka returned to write the story and the script. But The Legend of Zelda 2, Adventure of Link, had 2 directors this time. It had Tadashi Sugiyama, who was credited with Sujion in the credits, and it was his first major project ever at Nintendo.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to you. The game's other director, Yasuhisa Yamamura, was credited under his nickname Yamahen. And rather than Koji Kondo composing the sequel music, Akito Nakasuka was credited, created the music for the thing. Gosh, that was really hard for me to do for some reason. I just blanked out for a second and forgot how to pronounce names. So, The Adventure of Link was originally released on the Famicom Computer Disk System before its worldwide release, just like The Legend of Zelda. The FDS version appears to be an earlier version of the game, though, with a few obvious differences. For example, in the English release, the dungeons each have different colors, whereas in the FDF version, they're all gray. It's pretty boring.
Yeah.
To have them all be gray.
It's not great.
Also, the two dungeon bosses, Karak and Volvagia, the latter being initially named Barba in the NES release, have different graphical appearances between each system. So it looks different on the Famicom disc versus the NES. The game over screen, also in the English version, features the silhouette of Ganon. Oh, like he rose from the ashes, and the text says "Game Over, Return of Ganon."
He's coming back.
He's coming back. Whereas in the FDS version of the game, it says Return of Ganon, the end. So that's another difference. There are also some slight additions to the dungeons as well. So, for example, due to the additional sound trip that the disc system had, when Nintendo ported Zelda 2 over to the NES, they had to get rid of some musical elements.
Oh.
Yeah, so some people that got it on the NES didn't get all the music. On the main map, the icons denoting attacking monsters also look different, but the most significant change is how you spend your XP, as Link's 3 attributes cost the same, unlike the worldwide release. So when you play the worldwide release, each time you level up, they cost slightly more money. But in the Famicom disc version, they're always the same. Also, the game is designed to promote balanced leveling. So as the save game on the Famicom disc, it would only let you let the levels for the attributes go as high as whatever is set the lowest. So for example, if your life is at 5, your strength is at 4, but your magic's at 1, it's going to show everything as level 1.
Oh, so they wanted people if you want this number to go up, you need everything to go up.
Exactly. You can't do min-max builds or whatever and have a super tanky guy. You have to have it. If you want to make it look cool on your save, you got to make it all. If you want to be level 8, everything has to be level 8, essentially.
And that's what it's all about, is looking cool on your save file.
So everyone knows you don't mess around.
Mm-hmm.
While still saving the data regarding crystals that have been placed and items that have been collected. So, for example, your leveling will be at a certain point, but your items that you have and your crystals that you have, those are going to stay the same no matter what on your save file. So that's something that makes leveling a lot different than the other one, So I think, I don't know if we have it necessarily easier here on the NES version in the United States. I do feel like we have some cool features, but we also we're missing that music. So it kind of balances out, I think. Mm-hmm. Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link was released in Japan on January 14th, 1987 for the Famicom Disk System, and in North America on December 1st, 1988. What was I, 7 or 8 months old for the NES? Zelda 2 ultimately sold 4.38 million copies worldwide and was one of the most popular NES games in 1988. Lots of stores even reported that they were sold out of it over the holidays.
Nice. That's how you know you did well.
Yeah. Now, Zelda 2, funny enough, has a lot of different ways to play this game now, and I wanted to include these if you wanted to try it out. So, The Adventures of Link was re-released in 2003 on the Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition disc for the GameCube, the one that Tyler bought so he could play old games on a GameCube. Mm-hmm. It was also released again as part of the NES or classic NES series for the Game Boy Advance, and they did some minor changes, like the intro text was changed to read third Triforce rather than number 3 Triforce, things like that. They also changed the copyright date because they do that every time they remake a game. They make it up to the recent date it came out. The death animation removed flashing colors in a lot of these remakes to prevent seizures. Just did a solid red color instead. There were also various graphical and audio tweaks. It was released on as the 100th title on the Wii's Virtual Console in Japan on January 23rd, 2007. It was also released as that Wii Virtual Console later for North America and Europe too. They didn't make any text changes in this version, but it did have, again, the seizure protection, solid red colors. The Adventure Link was also re-released again on Nintendo 3DS, so you could play it there. And it was also re-released again on the Wii U. And finally, it was released as part of the NES Classic Edition that we all know and love, the little mini NES system that you can play games on. So that's where it is too.
You can play this thing anywhere.
You can. You really can. And also it's on Switch as well. I believe it's a part of the
I think you're right.
And the others. I haven't played it, but I'm pretty sure I saw it when I, spoilers, looked at my Switch, and it was there. Oh, man. That was the first thing I did when I got a Switch, by the way, is I bought that online service, because it's such a good deal.
$20 a year. Psh.
Totally.
You're losing money if you don't get it.
Exactly. So anyway, that's the first two Legend of Zelda games. We're going to get into much more detail with it along. I kind of also want to do like a whole episode on all the monsters and stuff in the games. I think those are really cool. Yeah. So I just wanted to go through these games, and then maybe we'll do an episode on all the monsters at the end up until, I guess, what would be the last one? Skyward Sword was the last one that we could
Breath
do.
Breath of the Wild. Well, yeah, Skyward Sword is a few years old now. We could probably do that.
We could do that one. I feel like Breath of the Wild is the newest title, so we probably shouldn't do Breath of the Wild as much as I want to, because spoilers, hey Mike, what you been playing? So much Breath of the Wild.
I'm so glad you're finally playing it.
I love it so much. I'm having so much fun. I like how they're putting all the worlds together and making it like every certain number of years, Link and Zelda come back and they have to defeat Ganon again. And that's like, I think they reference directly Ocarina of Time. I don't know if they reference Majora's Mask, but they definitely reference Link's Awakening, I think, in the Switch version. Yeah, but it's like they have all these little things. But I've been playing so much of that. I also was playing a lot of Jurassic World Evolution, because that was a free game on Xbox before Christmas, so before I got the Switch, and that's a really fun game. And then lastly, my girlfriend and I together been playing Untitled Goose Game, and that's so fun.
I still need to play that. It's on Switch now, huh?
It's on Switch.
It came out on everything now.
Oh, it's actually on Xbox Game Pass.
Oh, that's right.
So you can just play it that way. Yeah. It seriously, I bought it and then it came out on Xbox Game Pass like 2 days later. I'm like, thanks, Xbox. Cool. But it's fun to have on the Switch too, because it's more fun to have it like be portable and stuff too. So I've been playing those things. I've also been playing a little bit of Destiny with you, but I took a long break and it was nice, like a week and a half break. But what have you been playing, Tyler, over the holidays?
Well, I also took a Destiny break for about a week and a half because I went home and I took my laptop, and it can play Destiny, but it's like not really a great way to play Destiny. So I played a lot of Switch at home. I finished Link's Awakening finally, and I got back on the World of Final Fantasy train. I beat 2 of the final bosses. There's like 4 or 5 bosses you have to beat at the end that are just kind of they're a grind. You figure out the strategy and then you just execute the strategy for like 45 minutes, and they're not great, but I'm committed now to finishing that game. So that's what I've been working on, that Link's Awakening. And then we got back into Destiny recently. So in the past couple of days. So I've been playing a lot of Destiny as well. That's basically it. I'm excited to start Fire Emblem as soon as I finish World of Final Fantasy. So I don't know why I'm crossing my fingers for that. Crossing my fingers that I will eventually finish World of Final Fantasy and not continue putting it off like I have been.
Nice, man. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be playing some Breath of the Wild. So until I beat that, probably not going to be playing anything else. Sorry for the boring reports for the next
But you know what's not
weeks.
boring? Our email inbox this week.
Oh, yeah. Did you want to read some of these too, Tyler? Should I forward them to you so you could read some of them?
Sure.
I think it'd be fun.
I could log into the email inbox, which I
you
haven't
wanna
done in a long
log into the
time.
email inbox? Log into the email inbox, and I'll get started reading them. So we asked last episode. Sorry about last week, everybody. We were traveling. It was a busy time, the holidays. Yeah. Okay. But we were like, you know what? Let's ask people about their nostalgic gaming moments and see if anyone responds. And like a bunch of you responded. So we're going to go through those emails right now. The first one is from Thomas. Remember Thomas? He's emailed us before. What a great guy. Big fan of Thomas. He says, hey guys, happy Christmas to you both. Just sending some nostalgic gaming moments. There are 2 gifting moments that stick in my memory. The first is when I was 10 and a friend lent me the demo for Deus Ex, which is one of my favorite games. Everything about that game, the interactivity, the story, the weapons, was mind-blowing for a 10-year-old me who had only ever played Sonic the Hedgehog. What really sticks out in my memory, though, was being absolutely convinced that the demo was far too long to just be a demo, and that what I had was actually a full version of the game that had been accidentally shipped, and with whatever magazine my friend was reading. Spoiler, it wasn't. The other memory is much more recent. In 2017, I was in my final year of my PhD and very stressed. I had bought myself a PS4, which sat unopened in my wardrobe for 6 months. Oh, that's a shame, but I understand.
That's a real bummer.
Yeah, he must have been really busy. It happens. And as a Christmas present, my partner bought me a copy of Fallout 4. It was the first after finishing the doctorate and my entry back into video games after a long hiatus. The sense of freedom and openness in that game mirrored my own relief at finally finishing up after years. So although it's not been the best Fallout game, 4 still occupies probably a bigger place in my heart than any other game I've played recently. It was great hearing about your nostalgia moments. Hope you have a happy new year, Thomas. P.S., and this is great, just in regard to your British accents a couple of episodes ago, no need to apologize to me. Ireland is emphatically not a part of the UK, and as an Irishman, I instinctively support any attempt to ridicule the British. Thank you, Thomas. We're going to keep doing the accent work.
I'm on board with that.
I'm on board, too. Man, I like that a lot. So he has a childhood memory, Deus Ex, which I've never played. I feel like I'm missing out now. But I like that his memory is recent. 2017. That's not that long ago. But
Yeah.
I do think Fallout 4 is a good game. Definitely not as the same. It's kind of like, it's actually a lot like Zelda 2, I think, where it's not what people were expecting it to be.
Yep.
But thank you, Thomas, for the email. You want to read the next one up in the line of stars?
Well, I can't because I logged into the email and it needs a verification code. So I'm going to have it text you a verification code.
Oh, yeah. Have it text me that verification code.
So
have it text it to me, and then I'm going to send it to you over Discord right now. This is professional podcasting at its finest, I think.
That's right. So just waiting on
sent
that
it
one.
to you.
Great. All right. So
Are you in?
It's loading. I'm getting in. Okay. Which one should I read?
How about you do Thomas, the one that says the Rude Days one, right above Thomas's email?
Okay. Best video game gift. Okay. So first and foremost, this is UTR Rude Days.
Yeah. You can call him Rude Days, it says.
I'm going to call him Rude Days. He says, first and foremost, guys, I enjoy listening to your podcast every Monday. It makes the workday go by so much faster and makes a usually crappy start of the week a not so bad one. Oh, thanks.
That's nice.
As for my favorite gaming gift, this goes back to the early 2000s. I was a huge Dragon Ball Z fan growing up, and this was when DBZ was at the height of its popularity. One day, while at home, a commercial came on TV, and it was for the Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku game. My first thoughts, as soon as I saw this, was an RPG game that follows the story of my favorite TV show? Sign me up. Unfortunately, though, I didn't have the handheld for it, that being the Game Boy Advance. This was also, at the time, my older brother was wanting the original Xbox, and I just couldn't see my parents spending money for Christmas on both consoles. But, wouldn't you know it, that Christmas, my brother got his Xbox, and I got my GBA and the DBZ game. Guess my parents just like Tyler's and are totally awesome people. Now, before I go, I have a couple of quick questions for you two. Side note, my parents are very awesome. Okay, so a couple of quick questions. First, I was around 10 or so when Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku, when I played Dragon Ball Z Legacy of Goku, and while I loved it and enjoyed playing it, a few years later, I did realize and accept it that it was not a very good game. So my question is, did you have any games like that where you enjoyed it at the time, but later accepted that it was not a very good game?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, should I go first?
Yeah.
The Cool Spot 7-Up dot game for Sega Genesis. I made our friend Nate buy that game on eBay after he got a Sega Genesis emulator thing. And he came and I came over to his house. I was so excited to play it, and it was so hard.
I'm trying to think. I know that there are games that I was like, man, that game is so fun. And then later I come back to it and be like, oh, this game's actually not good. I think Star Fox Adventures for the GameCube. I had a lot of fun playing it, but would later come back to it and accept that it was probably not a very good game. Let's see. Oh, Bomberman 64, I want to say.
A lot of people didn't like that one.
I loved it, and I played the crap out of that game. And then years later, like sort of when I discovered reviews and the magic of like, oh, other people can tell you if games are good or not before you play them, I found out that that game was very universally panned as not a very good game, and that was very sad for me.
Oh, man. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other ones, but I have that nostalgia factor with games that just make it so I never feel bad about them.
Yeah.
It's actually more of a flaw on me than anything else, because there are games I like that are not very good.
That's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're enjoying yourself, then you win over the person who's not enjoying themselves. So
it's a good point, Tyler. Great point. Okay, what's the
there's
second
one
question?
more question. Second question. I had my Game Boy for a while and later would have the Game Boy SP, and while I played many games on the Game Boy, the one that stood out for me was Zelda, the Minish Cap. I probably played through this game more than 50 times, but when listening to people talk about their favorite Zelda games, this one never comes up. Did you guys ever play it and have opinions on it? The answer to that question is no, I did not play it. I owned it, and I played it very briefly, but it was just the wrong time for me to be playing it, I think, and I was like interested in other games at the time, and I never really went back to it. So I don't
think I ever played this game either.
Yeah, I don't have any solid opinions on that game, but it is on my list of games that like I need to complete at some point. So maybe I'll get around to that at some point.
Hey, I got a Game Boy Advance. Maybe I could play it when we do more of this history. You know what I mean? It came out in 04. Could definitely get that going.
Yep.
I'm into it. So to answer your question, no, but really it's a not yet. Rude days. Not yet.
Not yet.
Do you want me to do the next email?
Yeah.
All right. We got a new email, but really it's a Google security alert, so that's fine. It's just Tyler breaking into things. Christian says, hey guys, I was dreading not having an episode to listen to on Monday and thought about reaching out, but figured you guys were taking a Christmas break. Luckily, Thursday night, I just set a check and saw a new episode. It made me happy to see the episode and to listen to your gift stories. Guess what, Christian? That was my fault. It was not at all Tyler's. I forgot to post the episode we recorded last minute. But hey, you know what? It's up there, and it's still great. Okay, he says, my story starts with Three Kings Day. As far as I know, only Puerto Rico celebrates this on January 6th, and it's basically second Christmas. It sounds great.
That sounds awesome.
A celebration of the three wise men that brought gifts to Jesus on the day he was born. Luckily for me, it was Pokemon Blue.
Very nice.
I must have been 8 and only had a Game Boy as a video game console, so I never played an RPG. I put so many hours into fighting Pidgeys and my Charmander that when I got to Brock, I had about 20 Pidgeys and one Charmander with no health. I understand the mechanics of the game because it didn't know much English at the time. Because of that, every time I hit save, I thought I was saving the world. You know what? I think that's a good way to look at it. Every time you hit
kind
save,
of are, right? You're saving the world of Pokemon into the cartridge.
I think so too. I think it looks great. A few months later, I started understanding the game more and managed to actually beat it. However, I was sick of the random encounters in the tall grass. Aren't we all? We're all tired of the tall grass. So one day, my parents went out on a date and my aunt babysat me. I remember having about $30 in a coin bank, which I took out and begged my aunt to take me to KB Toys to look for a new video game. Oh, KB Toys. That's nostalgia in itself. The game I bought was Link's Awakening. Parentheses, my favorite. I was so excited to play a game where I could cut the grass. That's true. If you're walking into tall grass, you get to cut the grass. That's way better. You're right. Which brings me to the question to you guys. What was the first game you ever bought by yourselves?
Oh.
Again, I love your podcast, and I hope you guys have a great holiday. Thank you, Christian.
Wow.
The first game I ever bought. It had to be, you know what? I don't know if it was the first, but it's the one I have the most recent memory of. When I got a job at Cold Stone Creamery in Auburn, Washington, when I was 16 years old, I bought Oblivion for PC. This was after I built a PC. I bought Oblivion for PC. And
that's a good game to play on a brand new PC.
Super fun.
At that period of time.
Yeah, super fun. And that was the one I remember the most. What about you? Do you remember?
Well, the first one I can remember, this may not be accurate, but the first one I can remember is Zelda Ocarina of Time. I definitely saved up my money so that I could buy that almost as soon as it came out.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
And it was like $70 or something, because like Nintendo 64 games, they weren't joking around. Like sometimes they were really expensive.
They were not kidding around.
Yeah.
Man.
So I think so. That sounds right. Maybe I'm making that up, but
Hey, you know what? I don't think you're making it up, and if you are, you fooled me. You want to read Hassan's email? It's the next one up. We're going in order we received them, from oldest to newest.
Sure. Okay, so hi, Mike and Tyler. First off, love the podcast. Listen every day to and from work, and it's always a joyous trip down memory lane. I wanted to share one of my favorite video game holiday gift memories. So let's rewind to the fall of 2005 when the Xbox 360 had just launched. If you recall, there was a pretty big shortage of 360 consoles in North America at the time. I wanted one so badly, and my parents went to every store to look for one with me, but they were totally sold out. Fast forward a month to holiday season 2005, they were still nowhere to be found. My dad had recently gotten back from a business trip in Japan, and I noticed that there was a wrapped Christmas present waiting for me in our living room, parentheses, which was weird since we don't celebrate Christmas. I unwrapped it, and to my surprise, it was an Xbox 360. I had never been so excited and surprised by a present in my life. My dad bought this Xbox 360 in Japan, where the console was not selling well and did not suffer from shortages like we did in the US. It was so thoughtful of him, and I felt like the luckiest kid in the world. The only problem was region locking. I didn't know, and neither did my dad, understandably, that region locking was a thing. My Japanese Xbox 360 was an NTSC/J system, and so could only ever play other NTSC/J games from Japan or games that were fully region unlocked. I learned this when I bought an NTSC non/J version of Perfect Dark Zero in the US and couldn't get the game to run at all. I was kind of disappointed because this meant that if I wanted to buy a game on 360, I had to first go online and make sure that it was not region locked. And if it was, then there was nothing I could do short of importing the game from Japan or modding my Xbox. So for a while, the only game I played on the 360 was Call of Duty 2. But eventually, Halo 3 and Halo Reach came out, and thankfully, they were region free, so my 360 got a lot of use. Despite all these region locking annoyances, I was very grateful to my dad for going to such lengths to get me a 360, and is still one of my most cherished consoles. That's a great story, Hassan. I love that.
That is a great story. Cool dad. Cool dad alert. Helping you get that region locked Xbox. I mean, that's cool, though, that they finally realized that region locking's stupid, and they could just release things without a region lock on them, like Halo games.
Yep.
I completely forgot about that. That's why I responded to Hassan. I was like, hey, I completely forgot about region locking. Because it's not really a thing anymore, is it?
No, I don't think so. I know it was like sort of originally a thing with older consoles because TV like formats are different in different areas. So like there's the PAL format in Europe and there's the NTSC format in North America and in Japan. And so like the consoles were actually physically different to like accommodate those things, and the games had to actually be programmed differently because they run at different speeds. And so there was like sort of a good reason for it back in the day, but then they sort of just kept going with it even after TVs became much more standardized. And then it was just like, there was like no reason to do it. So
yeah, why would you even do it? Oh,
yeah,
I
guess
strange.
it was so that they could price games differently in different regions and not have to worry about like, oh, if this game is super cheap in Europe, I might import it from into North America and like get a really good deal on a game. I don't know.
Oh yeah, and like this is like the height of online purchasing is just starting around this time. So that's true. Well, thank you, Hassan, for the email. The next one's from Kyle, and it says, must have been Christmas around the year 1999 to 2000, but Final Fantasy VIII had just come out. My best friend and I each got it for each other that Christmas. What a cool way to make sure you and your friend both get a video game. Just agree to give it to each other. That's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah. I had wrapped his in a traditional manner. However, the gift I received was wrapped in a huge box, which inside was another box, and finally inside a cereal box filled with cereal. He always had a unique way of giving gifts. Anyways, thanks for the nostalgia trip. Thoroughly enjoyed the pod. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Happy holidays. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you so much.
Kyle.
Oh man, I forgot about doing the nesting doll gift giving, you know? The box in the box in the box in the box. So that's a boxception. That's a good way to put it. Do you want to read Nick's email?
Yeah, I will read Nick's email. Hey, Mike, hope you had a wonderful holiday. I just got back to work and listened to your Nostalgia Trip episode and remembered a handful of cool video game gift story that I'd like to share. When I was in first grade, my neighbor got a PS1 for his birthday, and I was insanely jealous. I was still using my Genesis at the time. That Christmas, my parents bought me a PS1, and I had never experienced such joy before. The console game with the legendary demo disc that had Gran Turismo, Crash Warped, Tomb Raider 2, I think, and many others. The one game that stuck out was a game called Blasto. This game is absolute chaos. You play a broad-chested space-traveling hero named Captain Blasto, and you're tasked with defeating an alien dictator named Bosk. You traverse the galaxy killing aliens, saving babes, the actual term in the game, and collecting powerful guns. The kicker to this game is that Blasto is voiced by Phil Hartman, so the comedy is golden. I love the demo, so my parents bought the game, and we played that game to death. My dad still beats it at least once a year. This Christmas, my parents bought it for me again for my own personal collection. Sorry to ramble. Great game. Highly recommend. Happy holidays, guys. Nick. That's great.
Thank you, Nick.
I had a neighbor with that demo disc, and I distinctly remember Blasto as sticking out on that demo disc as well. That game was super fun.
They got Phil Hartman to do the voice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's a great movie. Maybe we'll do Blasto someday. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah.
So the final email we got is from Matt in Japan. Hey, Matt. What's up?
Hey, Matt in Japan.
My best holiday gaming gift memory was Christmas 2000. That year, I got a pretty solid haul from Santa, including The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, Banjo-Tooie, Pokemon Gold, and Pokemon Silver.
Whoa,
looking forward to listening
Pokemon
to you guys.
Gold and Silver.
Oh, yeah, that's crazy. He says he looks forward to listening to us more in 2020. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone that emailed us. That's awesome.
Those are great stories. Thanks, everybody.
I was thinking maybe like one or two emails, and that was great. Thank you so much for the emails and taking a little trip down nostalgia lane with us. Oh, so much traffic, but it's nice traffic. It's good.
Everybody's nice to each other.
Everyone is nice to each other in Nostalgia Lane. If you want to send us game nostalgia, you can, or you can just talk about whatever you want: the weather, video games, why Tyler is so great at podcasting. Yeah, look at that. Compliment corner.
Wow,
we're in
dang,
it right
dude.
now.
Thank
You and
you.
me, buddy. But you can send an email to codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter at SneakerElf. You can find me at MeColetta. And with that, next week, I don't know what we're doing. What are we doing next week, Tyler? Do you know yet?
It's a surprise.
It's a surprise. So you'll have to wait and see for that one. We'll keep the Legend of Zelda stuff going for sure. And thank you again. And we hope you had a happy holiday season and welcome back to just normal life. Vacations are over. We're getting back into it again. But we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.